I did not want my very first felony trial to end up in a conviction and a life sentence. It would have been horrible for the very first felony client I have to end up with a life sentence. So we started investigating this case very, very aggressively, preparing very aggressively. I had a really wonderful investigator at the time who was a very charismatic Hispanic woman. And she contacted, at my request, I directed her to contact every single person who called the police who was driving past this accident. And we got these 911 callers in court. They testified to the resting points of the vehicles, and they were different from what the police officers documented. And since they didn't have photographs, it allowed us to challenge the underlying assumptions that the government accident reconstruction is made. So we attacked the causation element, and without causation, the government couldn't prove a felony DUI. The kids lied about what happened. They had some criminal backgrounds. We impeached them with that. There was very aggressive cross-examination. And we were successful in challenging their credibility. And then at the end, we also tried to argue that our client wasn't even potentially at the blood alcohol or breath alcohol level that he was, because due to his injuries, the officers didn't stick the breathalyzer in his mouth and had him produce a deep lung sample. But instead, what they did is they used the manual trap mode, which is a lot less reliable. It kind of works almost like a vacuum cleaner, sucking up ambient air coming from your mouth and nostrils. Very different from you really inhaling and exhaling and providing a deep lung sample. So we argued that the BAC wasn't what it was, that the causation was backwards, and they struck our client's car. We argued credibility, we argued incompetence, and at the end of the day, the jury acquitted our client. The jury found
Wow.
him not guilty and of the felony DUI, because they really didn't believe the government met their burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt. They had a reasonable doubt, Kevin, about whether or not he actually caused the accident. And one of the things that were most incredible that happened was my client and I had a series of personal conversations. And one of the things that I like to do with my clients when I feel that they need to, lay their soul bare when they're being judged by the jury is I always ask a client, when I identify kind of like what's the reason why this happened, I always tell them, look, man, if God willing, you have a chance and the jury finds you not guilty, will you please promise me that you will never do this again? And
Yeah.
this gentleman was committed that if ever given a chance again, he was going to stop drinking and he was just going to race horses at the reservation. That's exactly what he did. And so that was the first very serious felony trial I had. It resulted in me being assigned the most complex cases that nobody else thought, had a chance of winning. And so it allowed me to cut my teeth on a DUI case and learn from it. And that was my early exposure to that. But over the years, I realized that that's not sufficient for so many of my other clients, and something more needed to be done.